We are starting Chapter 6, moving right along. We're going to talk about the business-to-business side of marketing as opposed to the business-to-consumer side. Very similar process, just much more complex, much more sophisticated, even a more sophisticated buyer. We'll talk about some of those issues. The objectives of this chapter is to understand the characteristics of that B2B market, how they are different from the B2C consumer market, where we use appropriate e-commerce and social media, and identify the different buying situations in that buying process. The process, again, is the same steps, just more complex, more complicated, more people involved. Business-to-business marketing, and this is where you're selling to some kind of organization other than an individual or a family. So this is something that is officially, legally defined as a business. The marketing of goods and services that businesses and other organizations buy for purposes other than personal consumption. So personal consumption is by individuals and families. Businesses consume for the purpose of producing something. Steps in the buying process, the business buying process, and this, of course, is very similar to the consumer buying process, just more complex, a little more sophisticated, a little more technical. First of all, of course, you have your problem recognition. Then you do a general need description. You do a product specification. You look for your different supplier search. And this is real critical here for marketers, is that your company has to be in that search. So somewhere you have to make sure that they are aware of your existence, what you have, and so on. Much of this is dependent upon your sales force to get that information out in the B2B side. You solicit proposals in step 5. You choose who your supplier is, and sometimes that can be a little more challenging than is obvious. The order routine specification, how do you put the order through, who has to approve it, and so on. And then, of course, you need to do a review of the performance of the supplying company. Did they do what they were supposed to do? Here are the differences, and these are very significant. Market structure and demand. Okay, the demand of any business is derived by someone else, is derived by their customer down the line, either the end user or the customer right behind them in that channel of distribution. There is no direct demand. Businesses don't consume anything for their own purpose. They consume things such as supplies, machine parts, in order to produce something for someone else's demand. So it is derived demand, not direct. Nature of the buying unit. There are specific functions that go along with this buying unit. We'll talk about that. It's the buying center. Types of decisions that get made, and we will look at that. And then the decision process itself is different. Okay, let's look at derived demand from the I suppose it's for textbooks. So this is education. You need textbooks, although for the most part we aren't using paper books much anymore. So education is that end result. You, the student, are the final consumer in this process. So it's education, needs textbooks, which need paper, which need pulp, which goes into the forestry industry. So if you turn this around, forestry products provide pulp, which produces paper, which produces textbook, which is used in education, which gives you your degree. The demand is derived by you wanting a degree. Some of the differences. Reason for the purchase is to satisfy institutional needs. Custom-made products, often in industrial marketing, not necessarily as often with us, although that's become a little more frequent with the internet. Things like you can buy directly from Dell, those sorts of things. Nature of demand, it is derived by some customer out there. Negotiated terms of sale, often. And if you have never been trained in negotiation, you should know how to negotiate, if for nothing else, for your first salary, for your first real job. Geographic dispersion. Companies are usually concentrated in a business area. We as individuals, we're dispersed all over the place. Emphasis on personal selling, extensive in the B2B side. That's where most of your sales jobs are, because you have a more complex process. So you need that one-on-one activity. Buying motives, primarily rational, and I use that term loosely. Purchasing skills of the buyer are extensive in the B2B side. There are universities that offer degrees in purchasing. I believe it's either Eastern Michigan or Central Michigan have a program just in purchasing. Reciprocal agreements, oftentimes with B2B side, now those have to be legal reciprocal agreements, that you do something for them, they do something for you, but it has to be certainly above board and legal. Buying motives, realize that even though the B2B side, they are primarily rational, they're still human beings, and they behave like human beings, which oftentimes isn't rational. The business marketplace, you have producers, resellers, organizations. Organizations oftentimes are those that produce services. Resellers are your wholesalers, distributors, retailers. Producers are those that are actually producing, manufacturing the product or service. Here's your North American Industry Classification System. All companies are classified by this system, so that when you are looking to market to them, you probably are going to market similarly for like companies. So if you look at the frozen fruit example here, you are going to market likely to those companies that are in that 311 area. For cell phones, you're going to market to those in the 513 area, and I don't mean area as in geographic area, but the classification system. This is essentially, you're going to use this as part of your marketing research, so you know who you're marketing to, what they're into, and so on. And that's a sort of a segmentation piece, because those companies may very well need different kinds of products or services. Here's your buying center. Now these are not individuals, these are functions of the buying center. So you have decision makers, you have users, you have influencers, you have buyers, and you have gatekeepers. Your buying centers oftentimes are trained professional buyers. They know what they're doing, know how they're doing it. They're trained in negotiation tactics. You have purchasing agents, procurement officers, directors of materials management. This is especially true in government. Roles in the buying center. Your initiator is the function that realizes there's something that the company needs and starts the process. The user typically are those who eventually will be actually using whatever you're purchasing. The gatekeeper is that function that controls the flow of information. Influencer are those who provide information into the process. Oftentimes these are technical specialists of some kind. Your decision maker, that's the function that actually approves the final decision. And your buyer, your purchasing agent, they're the ones that keep the whole process going and implement the actual purchase decision once it's made. Problem recognition, that's your first step back in that buying decision process. You have to realize that there's a difference between what you need and where you are. So that's your problem recognition. And this then starts the process. Step 2 is information search. Here you're going to look for information on what products you need, what's out there, what's available, what's not available. You put together oftentimes the specifications and identify potential suppliers. Once you get those bids back, you're going to evaluate those alternatives. Sometimes that process to get the bids back is called an RFP, a request for proposal. They will send these out to that list of suppliers they have and then get a proposal back. They evaluate them. Now, oftentimes today there are many standards involved in that evaluation process. This is especially true in some of the industries where you have your ISO certification, such as ISO 9000, ISO 14000, and so on. Select the individual, the company that's going to actually do whatever you need done. You can do that in a lot of ways. You can have single sourcing. That's where you have just one supplier. That makes life simple. It may not give you the variation, the variety you need. Most companies use multiple sourcing if there are multiple sources available. And reciprocity, this is where you actually have trading partners where, again, you do something for them, they do something for you. That is legal, of course. The decision process, select the product and the supplier. Now you're going to go through there and say, can they do it? Will they do it? Oftentimes, this can be outsourced. So there could be times where you're going to let other people do this for you, such as many companies today outsource their marketing research function. Companies like Burke Marketing Research in Cincinnati, they are solely there for companies who want to outsource their marketing research processes and so on. Evaluate after the fact. This is very important to make sure that the company, the organization did what they said they're going to do. If they didn't, they could essentially shut down your process. They could shut down your buying. So this is a critical part. This is part of the metrics that we talked about. Many times you have very specific metrics to determine whether or not a company did what they were supposed to do. Here are some of the metrics that you may very well use. Satisfaction, quality, customer engagement, purchase intentions. Will you use this company again? And then the promptness of any problem resolution. Don't ever think there won't be problems, because there almost always are. That's the nature of doing business. It's how companies react to them and solve the problems that you really focus on. There are 3 types of industrial buying situations. First of all, straight rebuy. That's where you don't change anything about what you've done. For instance, if you have a set of copiers in your organization, you're buying copy paper, rarely do you change anything about that. You order so many cases of paper, so on and so forth, nothing different. A modified rebuy, there's something here that's different. If you are buying paper for your copiers, it could be that your delivery or your intake department can only accept things on Tuesdays or Saturday mornings or something like that. You've changed your manufacturing process so that the specifications, the tolerance limits are different. So something about the situation is different. New task buying, that's where you've never done this before, such as in classrooms. In many classrooms, there are the audio-visual systems that are fairly new. That's a new task buy. Never had them before, so it's a much more lengthy and involved process. I think there's also a 4th type on here, and that's where you actually choose to manufacture, produce the product yourself as opposed to going out to a supplier. Many companies today are doing this, or they are buying up their suppliers so they don't have to go through this purchasing process. So that, in very brief terms, is business-to-business buying. Very complex, can take a few minutes. It can take several months or years to do this, especially if you're working with any kind of government institutions. There you are. Again, if you need me for something, call, email, or chat. Talk to you later.